Story. Its black teeth bit me. I stood on the porch looking out. Zap, hit, sharp, crack, crack. Crackle, the sparks ignited the black mist and faded away. The black mist was attacked by a presence within it. It tried to devour it. Thorns, daggers, tentacles fought it, but the presence held its own. Mortimer looked up at me. "No. Let her come to us," I said. We both watched, sparks emanating off a spinning sphere that bobbed and weaved its way towards us. It reached the porch. She took a step. A meek girl, brown shoulder-length hair, blue winter jacket and jeans. She looked like a student who would be at home on any campus in the 1970s. The only other distinction was the long laceration across her back. Her right hand was missing, along with chunks of her left torso. It appeared as if a shark had attacked her. Sophie looked at me. "I'm Sophie. I was told to come here," she said. "Come in, please." Sophie looked at Mortimer. "Hello, boy." She moved to him and ruffled his ears, crouching, hugging him as if he were an old friend she had not seen in a while. Mortimer licked her face. Sophie smiled, forgetting her surroundings for a few moments, and kept cuddling him. Mortimer led Sophie into the house. I followed to find Sophie looking around the lounge. "Looks like my professor's study, only without the piles of books on a large desk near the window." "He was cool," she said. I gestured to the chair. She promptly went and sat down. Mortimer went to her and rested his head on the arm of her chair. She reached over and stroked his head, looking at me. Didn't really get much time with him. He was to be my second-year form tutor, but I didn't make it that far. She waved her right arm at me. "They ate it." Just had end-of-term drinks at our local watering hole, the Pheasant. My friend Laura went off with her boyfriend Tom, and I decided to head back to campus. They offered to walk me back, but I thought I'd be fine. I'd done it a million times before, so I set off up the hill towards the dorm. It was roughly 20-25 minutes walk, so it wasn't too far. I could see several other students walking ahead of me on the road. Everyone used the path through the cemetery to campus because it was a shortcut. I didn't think anything of it. I was slightly buzzed and I wrapped my jacket around me, folded my arms and walked. It was cold out, so I picked up the pace, thinking about a nice cheese toastie and a cup of tea before bed. Would hit the spot nicely. Sophie smiled to herself. Had an 8:30 train to London in the morning and I couldn't miss that. Sophie remained still as if entranced by the flames in the fireplace. She shook her head. I walked faster. I looked up to see the cemetery ahead. A small group of students in front of me had vanished. I wasn't worried because the cemetery had a winding path that meandered round trees, ledges and gravestones. During autumn, it was always misty at night, so that didn't bother me none. I sped up. I wasn't worried, but I didn't want to be there too long either. So I picked up the pace, kept my head down and moved fast. She stopped. It came out of nowhere. Slam. I felt someone hit me hard from the side, taking me off my feet. I landed on my shoulder, crushing it. The pain shot into my neck and head. The thing was still on top of me. I screamed and started lashing at it with my fingers. I thought I was going to get raped, but this thing smelled foul. It held me down with one hand on my chest. Its claws dug into me. "Behave!" It grinned, a wide grin, exposing its black teeth. It looked like a massive toad, only its mouth was tearing bits of something it was eating. I slammed my right hand into its face, only nothing happened. Click, click. "That'll do no good," the thing said. It pulled my right hand out of its mouth and showed me. My scream was cut off by claws digging into my torso. It lifted me up and slammed me back into the ground. It knocked the wind out of me. I must have passed out. Sophie wiped more tears rolling down her eyes. Mortimer placed his head on her lap. She placed her left hand on his head gently. I came to as it dragged me down a hole at the edge of the cemetery. I saw a few rocks to my right. I knew I had to get one. I reached for it, only my hand was gone. The stump was covered in slimy goo. My heart raced. This thing was going to eat me. I couldn't get my head around what it was doing. It was real. All I knew was I had to do something to get away from it. Slam! I used my free leg to kick it at the back of its knee. It stumbled forward, releasing me to steady itself. I turned and tried to run, but my right leg wouldn't move. I used my left leg, shuffled, tried to find some ground to grip to get up and run, but I couldn't get up. You won't get far, silly girl. That's my toxin in you. It flashed its claws at me. They dripped transparent liquid beads. I still kept dragging myself. Slice. My back stung badly. It was burning. I kept trying to shuffle on, but my body felt heavy. With each reach, I got heavier and heavier. My eyes closed. I fell. It seemed endless. I kept falling. I couldn't see anything around me. Sophie looked at me. Sometimes I think I'm still falling. I kept my gaze on her. I woke up in what looked like a long tunnel. A few of these things were moving around down there. They were not more than 3 feet high, but they were strong. One of them was chewing on a human arm. I'm not sure how I could see them because it was pitch black. It was wet, but I felt okay. I got up. The pain had left me. It was weird. I didn't care. I had to get out of there and warn the university. I moved, but my foot felt weird. I looked down. I was standing on someone's ankle. Sorry. I quickly moved my foot. It slid straight through their ankle. That boot looked familiar. I bent down to get a proper look. Strange. I didn't feel like I had to rush. I wasn't frightened anymore. I moved around the person, trying not to touch the body in case they were dead. I might know them. I shifted around the body and looked at her face. My eyes widened. Oh no. There was no fear. I tried to evoke emotion, but there were none. I couldn't cry despite looking at my own face staring back at me. Mortimer left Sophie's side and went to his rug beside my chair. He sat down, placing his head on his paws, eyes shut. Sophie smiled. She looked at me. I was in limbo. An apparition, or at least I think I was. I watched these things for a while. They did not see me. I thought I'd better get to the campus and warn them. I dashed up the tunnel. It was amazing. I was airborne, fast, slid straight through towards a few students walking towards me. 2 girls and a boy. Hey guys, you need to get out of here. They didn't even notice I was there. Hey, listen to me, I called after them. It didn't make a blind bit of difference. I kept dancing around them, screaming, trying to get their attention. Nothing. I might as well be on mute. I ran after them, but they didn't even hear me coming. I stopped. Hey! I screamed. What the hell was going on? I kept following them until they reached the cemetery exit. I dashed after them. Just as I stepped across the threshold between the road and the cemetery, yank! Something tugged me back. Whack! I was lying next to my body again in the tunnel. Those things were sifting around me, ripping parts of another poor soul they had murdered. "Hello again." Sophie looked at Hamish enter the lounge. She crouched down, offering a hand to him. Hamish backed away. "He's not one for sentiment," I said. "That's cool. My cat Oreo was a bit like that," Sophie said. She sat back down in the armchair. Hamish walked over to my armchair and perched on it, his eyes on Sophie. "I've been in that cemetery ever since. Even those things left a while back. I don't know where they went. I don't really care. Nothing came of my not showing up at home. It was just my mum. I'm sure she tried, but I was never found. The university and police stopped looking a while back. I'd hear students talking about it as they passed through the cemetery. But soon after, I was forgotten. This burned me. It made me sick. How could they forget me? How could they forget me so quickly? I carried it around in me as I paced the cemetery. And then I saw my favorite professor walking through with another student. They were discussing her dissertation and her trainee teacher placement. She was going to teach at the school I wanted to be placed at. He was her mentor and guiding her like he should have been guiding me. Anger brimmed. I was seething. I ran up to the gravestone as they passed it and sliced it with my hand. Crack. I felt contact. The gravestone hurled at the professor and student. She got out of the way, but he was hit square in the chest, flooring him. I screamed. The student covered her ears as the professor lied there, unconscious. Sophie looked at the flames in the fireplace. It's what the black mist felt like as I walked through it. That's why it attacked you. It sensed your rage and coveted it, I said. Sophie kept her eyes on me. I decide what happens to me, she said. I nodded. I hurt him by accident, but it didn't end there for me. I was trapped as my body was never found, haunting the cemetery. Students became afraid to walk through it at night. Stories quickly spread of someone being shoved, but no one was in sight. The crack of a gravestone behind students walking to campus. Stones hurled at passers-by. I just wanted to remind them that I was there, and to not forget me. It was all I could do, so I kept at it. Only it wasn't enough. The rage kept building, and I couldn't exercise it. I had to find a new way, as nothing was working anymore. I saw a fresh student looking at his phone as he walked through the cemetery. Something snapped and I got close. I apparated right in front of him, screaming. He could see me, his mouth open. My scream penetrated his eyeballs. They exploded. He was dead before he hit the ground. Sophie wiped her eyes. What is there to say? I killed someone. For that I should suffer. That's why I'm here, right? You're here because the Divine Mother brought you here. But yes, the karmic books need to be balanced. There is time for that. Tell me something. How did you leave the cemetery? It's as you said. She came to me and took me down to my body. I watched her recite a blessing and then she touched my forehead. My body incinerated. Ash flaked in the air and then disappeared. After that, I was free to leave the cemetery. She then told me to find my way here. She was a little bit scary, so I did. Is she here? She will come to you when she deems it necessary, I said. Hamish leapt on the floor in silence and trotted out of the room. Cats, they think they own the place, Sophie said. Some of them do, I said. Sophie pushed the hair out of her eyes with her left hand. What happens now? Follow me. I stood up. Sophie got up. Mortimer opened his eyes and raised his head. Sophie went over to him and crouched down. Time to go, boy. Stay well. She hugged Mortimer, who licked her face, making her smile. I'll miss you too, she said. I led Sophie down the corridor. Mortimer walked beside her as she followed me straight ahead to the third door on the right. I opened it to reveal a classroom with students all sat at their desk, studying. They're waiting for you, I said. I don't understand. Sophie looked at me. You were robbed of the chance to be a teacher. I'm extending that courtesy to you now. Mortimer agreed. What about the boy I killed? Sophie said. All the children you see here need a teacher who understands what they went through. They need to be supported and nurtured. Assistance to progress. Does that sound like you? Sophie nodded. I would love that. This is the first step, I said. Sophie walked through the threshold. Her right hand formed at the stump. Her clothes changed and she looked more like a healthy teacher, rather than someone who had been murdered by ghouls. Hamish came over to us just as I closed the door. Mortimer and I followed him up to the entrance of the temple. We walked out to the balcony. A stiff breeze blew below us. The black mist coiled, spinning and whirling, clicking and crackling. I turned to my right to find the Divine Mother stood beside me. Her effulgence decreased to reveal a beautiful woman, slender and dressed in white apparel. Her black flowing locks were a stark contrast to her grey eyes and fair complexion. I touched my heart, my right hand, and gave a bow. Divine Mother, I said. How did the young one do? She was ready to become a teacher. Good, Divine Mother said. May I ask a question? Divine Mother looked at me, her gaze focused. Ask. Why did you intervene with her? She would have found her way here eventually. Why did you speed up her progression? She is my child. A mother's duty is to go to her child when they are hurting, Divine Mother said. We are all your children, even the ghouls that murdered her, I said. Divine Mother smiled at me. She looked at Mortimer, who was giving her a big doggy grin. She stroked his head. Ask yourself, Guardian, why did I bring you here? Could it be that one such as I have favorites? Or could it be that here is what will best assist you to progress? Divine Mother looked at me, her eyes focused. She turned and walked to the edge of the balcony. She stopped. Mortimer, keep him on this side of the rim. Woof. Mortimer barked. Divine Mother disapparated, gone as if she was never here. As you can appreciate, I'm not the biggest cog in this wheel. You're probably wondering what happened to the ghoul that murdered Sophie. It will come here. And when it does, you can hear its story. Be patient. See you next Sunday at 11. I will introduce you to my next guest. Godspeed.